This week by 64-year-old Diana Nyad, successfully swimming the Florida Strait, 110 miles from Cuba to Florida. She's the first to ever complete that swim, 35 years after her first try. Amazing. When Diana was just 2, back in 1952, a woman named Florence Chadwick was the one setting the swimming records. Florence was the first woman to swim the English Channel in both directions. But in 1952, she was attempting to swim from Catalina Island off the coast of LA back to the mainland. And on this particular day, when she was swimming, the weather was very cold and a heavy fog set in. She could barely see the boat that was accompanying her. And she swam for 15 hours. Several times she cried out to the people in the boat, I can't do it. Take me out of the water, including to her mom, who was following in the boat. Every time her mom and the others in the boat would say to her, you can do it. Keep going. You can make it. Finally, her energy gave out and she just quit swimming. And they had to scoop her up out of the water and put her in the boat. It was only after they put her in the boat that she realized she was just 1 mile from shore. 22-mile swim. She stopped just almost there. The next day at the press conference, Florence told the media, all I could see was the fog. I think if I could have seen the shore, I would have made it. Isn't everything in life easier when you can see to the end? That reminds me of this passage from 1 Corinthians 13. This is from the Message, but Paul writes, we don't yet see things clearly. We're squinting in a fog, peering through a mist, but it won't be long before the weather clears and the sun shines bright. We'll see it then, see it all as clearly as God sees us, knowing Him directly just as He knows us. Today we come to the end of Cover to Cover. And at the end of the Bible is a book called Revelation that a lot of people do a lot of different things with. I've seen all the prophecy charts and the predictions, and yes, I've read Left Behind. But we've been trying to see the big picture of things as we go cover to cover. So I want to stick to the big picture in Revelation today. Revelation is filled with lots of pictures and lots of images, so it's easy to get off onto these tangents. What about the temple? What about the rapture? What about the 1,000 years? Who's the Antichrist? What should I be watching out for? Here's the main point, though. Revelation is to help every person who's struggling through this life see the shores of heaven, which, just like in Florence's story, is closer than you think. You see, heaven, what's actually pictured is our ending place as followers of Jesus. Heaven is an important topic for us because you start actually talking with people and interacting with people about heaven, and one of the things you quickly find out is true is that we actually have a lot of apprehensions and even some fears about heaven. Probably the biggest fear, if we're honest, is from the way that people picture heaven. The picture that tends to get painted for us is that heaven is going to be kind of like a long, extended church service. And no matter how much you enjoy church, most of us are less than excited at the thought of spending eternity at church. Right? Floating on a cloud, playing a harp, singing a song. If that's heaven, I'm not that excited, right? And so what happens in our minds, we would never say this publicly, but privately, this is what we tend to feel, is we get in this spot where we believe that heaven is certainly greater than hell. If those are my two choices, I choose heaven. But that it's somehow not as great as here and now. That somehow earth is greater than heaven. And we're not sure what's going to come. We don't want to leave behind the good things here. And so we find ourselves saying things like, well, of course I want to go to heaven someday. Right? And a teenager might say, God, heaven is going to be great, but could you just please wait until I get my driver's license? You know? Just could I experience that first and then heaven can happen? Or a girl, a woman might say, God, could you just hold off until my wedding day? I mean, I've had that binder building since I was 8, and I don't want to miss it. If you could just wait until after my wedding day, that would be awesome, God. The boy might say, could you wait until after my wedding night, God? I've been thinking of that since I was a little boy. Some people, some families might be saying, God, could you hold off on heaven? We really want to go. But we've got this big trip to Hawaii that we've been planning for and saving for, and could you just let us experience that first, then we'll be ready. You ever thought that way? We have some trepidation in our minds. I mean, we're sure heaven's going to be great and all, but we don't want to miss anything here either. And I think actually that Satan, the evil one, has done a brilliant job. We may not even realize we're doing it, but Satan has done a brilliant job of convincing many people that heaven is less than earth. Can I have you look at that equation for just a little bit? That's the first thing on your notes. If we believe that heaven is less than earth, can we put that up? If heaven is less than earth, none of us would say that we believe that, but it's what we believe. Do you have that on the slides? Heaven is less than earth? I think we often don't say that, but we live that belief. It's subconscious. We don't say it, and we don't even recognize it until somebody points it out to us. But we can often live believing that somehow heaven is less than earth. There it is. And it causes some problems. Here's what's problematic in how that lives out for us. If you believe that heaven is less than earth, then you will not share your faith in Jesus Christ. It's just not going to happen. You won't share with your friends, your neighbor, your family. If in the back of your mind you're thinking heaven doesn't sound all that great, if it doesn't sound that great to you, why would you ever want to invite people to spend eternity there? It's very subtle, right? You may have to think about this a little bit. But could it be that the reason you're not fired up about sharing Jesus with other people and what He's done for you and where He's headed is that you're actually not all that excited about where you're headed with Jesus? Because when you get excited about something, you share it with everybody. You don't need a class on how to do it. You don't need a preacher to say, here's how you ought to go about it. You just naturally share. Let's think about it this way. Let's say that in this envelope, I have 30 tickets to next week's Seahawks home opener against the 49ers. These are premium seats, parking passes included. I'm going to give this to you. You going to share? Yeah, right. You're going to be talking to all your close. I can't believe this happened. And you're going to be inviting the ones that you want to spend time with to come and experience this with you. If it's good news, you share it. Or if you're not into football, put whatever you want in here. Caribbean cruise tickets. Front row at the sold-out concerts. The new iPhone that hasn't even been announced yet. Fill the envelope with cash and we get excited. Or what if in this envelope I don't have that item, but I have a map and some instructions. And it kind of maps out for you and some simple, achievable, anyone can do it instructions on how you can get that item or that place that means the most to you. Then what are you going to do? Well, then this is our trouble with heaven, right? Then is some of our cynicism, some of our, we've been in this world and we know this world hurts and it sounds too good to be true, so I'm going to pursue that for myself, but until I'm sure it's not a scam, I'm not going to share it with others. I think sometimes that's the way we feel about heaven. Man, I hope it's true. I can't be sure. So I'll just kind of wait and see. How many of you need reminded that heaven is real? And that you can take as many people with you as you want to heaven. The price has already been paid. That should fire us up. Listen to this. The only thing you can take with you to heaven is other people. But if we let this earth is somehow greater than heaven get into our minds, it has all kinds of negative implications. We won't be inviting people to that place because, frankly, we're not that excited about it. That's the danger of having heaven too small in your mindset. Here's another danger of having heaven that's too small. It makes you place unrealistic expectations on this earth. Now, maybe you've never thought about this, but if you believe that somewhere in your mind that this life is kind of as good as it gets, that this is your best shot at happiness, that heaven is going to be kind of dull, and so I better party now, it's as good as it gets, that is placing an expectation on this world that it was never meant to carry. Listen to what A.J. Conyers writes. He says, even if we manage to escape some of the bigger tragedies in life, which few of us do, life rarely matches our expectations. Every vacation eventually comes to an end. Friends often move away. When we do get a taste of what we really long for, it never lasts. You been there? I have. You save up for that big family vacation, or you can finally buy or build your dream house or purchase your perfect car. You find that pair of jeans that fits just right. You're headed to your anniversary dinner and you're thinking, man, this is going to be it. But pretty quickly you realize that wasn't it. Take a look at what C.S. Lewis says about this. C.S. Lewis says, when I find in myself desires which nothing in this world can satisfy, the only logical explanation is that I was made for another world. Isn't that good? We try to find things on earth to substitute what God made us to experience, to long for, and nothing quite fills that void yet. Colossians 3 says, since then you have been raised with Christ, set your hearts on things above, where Christ is. He's seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things. And that's my goal today at the end of Cover to Cover, to set your mind and your hearts on things above. That's what I see as a primary goal of Revelation at the end of this grand story of God that we've been reading. We want to try to turn around that equation so that we can all feel and know the Revelation is helping us see heaven is greater than earth. Man, it absolutely is. Heaven is greater than earth. Here's how we can say that. Just from Revelation, we can see that heaven, we're going to be given, everyone who follows Jesus, some awesome accommodations. That's one of the things that makes heaven greater than earth. Just some awesome stuff that's coming. The old line is that Jesus told His disciples in John, I'm going to prepare a place for you. I'll come back so that you may be where I am. And he went to start preparing heaven. That's 2,000 years ago. God took 6 days to create the earth. He's been working on heaven for 2,000 years. Wow. It's going to be good. And it's going to be beyond expectation. Sometimes when you're someplace new, maybe you're staying at a hotel you've never stayed at before, and it surpasses what you thought it was going to be. You open the door and you walk in, you kind of go, wow. Or remember when you were a little kid and your dad took you to your first Major League Baseball game or your first NFL game, and you got to that great big stadium or arena, and you went through the gates and you marched up the steps or around that concrete swirl, and you walked through the tunnel and you just went, wow. Because of the colors and the size and the setting. It's more than you imagine. And we're going to try to imagine heaven a little bit, but the one thing we know is that it's going to be beyond anything we can even imagine. It says, no eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind has ever imagined what God has prepared for those who love Him in 1 Corinthians 2:9. But we're supposed to try. And John, the author of Revelation, tries to help us. And especially in Revelation chapter 21, if you want to just kind of open your Bible to that chapter, What John is doing in Revelation 21, after talking about keep your eye on the goal, after talking about, there's some really tough things that happen and this world is going to get worse, it's going to look like the enemy is winning, hold on, God is coming, God wins in the end. He's trying to paint this, he's kind of trying to be our heavenly realtor. He's saying, God gave me a glimpse, I got a visit, and I want to tell you what this home is going to be like, this property where we'll live someday. It begins in Revelation 21. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away. There was no longer any sea. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride beautifully dressed for her husband. You pick up right away that John is going to have trouble describing this. He's saying, okay, picture your wedding day, the best day of your life, and the bride when you first see her and she's coming down, and it's just how everything is prepared and prepped and perfected for that day. And then he goes on to try to describe some of what that's like, and it's kind of some earthly words for some heavenly things that doesn't really match up. But tell you what, I don't want us to get all preoccupied with the exact details. That almost always gets us in trouble in Revelation. But I do want us to see what John seems to be pointing to. As you read down through this chapter, there's just some incredible details that I want to point to. The first would be in verse 16. It's the incredible size of heaven. It says it's 12,000 stadia, which is 1,400 miles long and wide and high. Now, 1,400 miles, to put this in perspective, is Vancouver, BC, all the way down the coast to San Diego, California. And then you turn the corner and you head to Dallas, Texas. 1,400 miles. Just the foundations are going to cover half the map of the continental United States. And it's 1,400 miles high. Our atmosphere on this earth is only 60 or 80 miles high. And think of it this way, that would amount to roughly 600,000 stories in heaven. That's some elevator ride. The point is, I think, that heaven is massive. There is room for everyone. You don't have to worry about it being overbooked. You don't have to worry about getting crowded out. There are people who get all worried about the 144,000 number in Revelation and elsewhere. In fact, Jehovah's Witnesses teach only 144,000 people make it to heaven. The rest just get the new earth. There's room for all. There's plenty of room for everyone who follows Jesus Christ. He's making sure of that. Just this massive space, heaven. I also noticed the walls. In verse 17 it talks about the walls. The walls are 144 cubits. That's 200 feet thick. I think John's saying you can know heaven's going to be a safe place. There are going to be no fears. It's going to be a lasting place. No one's going to break through. Nothing's going to fall down. It's going to last forever. The streets, look at verse 21, talking about the streets of heaven, and I love this. I spent some time thinking about what is God saying, what is John pointing out with this. The streets in heaven, he says, are like purest gold. And I love thinking about that because what has been the most valuable metal, the most valuable commodity all through the history of our world? Gold, right? Throughout time, people have treasured that and valued that and used it to buy stuff, use it to adorn important people and expensive places. God is saying, I love this. What does it say? That God takes our most valuable commodity on the earth, and in heaven, He uses it to pave streets. Are you starting to see the value of it? There's a whole new value system. And maybe that's why Jesus spent so much time trying to turn our value system around. He says, you live in the kingdom of heaven. There are different things that are important. There are different priorities. Let's start living that way now. I noticed the gates in heaven. Verse 21 talks about the gates too, these huge doors or gates into heaven. It says there are 12 of them, 3 on each side. You might be surprised that St. Peter is not listed as manning any of the gates. That's not in the Bible. Jesus Christ is the gatekeeper. You enter through Him, not anyone else, regardless of what our jokes and our cartoons portray. But these gates that are pictured as the doors into heaven are described by John as like massive pearls. And don't miss the image there. How's a pearl made? A pearl's made when an oyster gets a little piece of sand or a little irritant inside of there, and it's scraping. And so it secretes kind of layer upon layer of these juices, these lubricants, and after much pain for the oyster, there's pearl. And when we enter into heaven, we will be going through the pain of Jesus Christ. Heaven is a place where pain is transformed. And Jesus makes that doorway for us, pierced for our transgressions, crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was upon Him. By His wounds we are healed, it said in Isaiah. It took a lot of pain, but it made something beautiful for us. The accommodations there, man, they're going to be awesome. The second thing that John kind of points to that we can know about heaven is that we'll experience perfected relationships. You know what gets really messy and painful and disappointing in our world? It's our relationships. Our pain, so much of it, our disappointment comes from there. So some of our fears even can come from there. I've talked to some people close to the end of their lives that instead of looking forward to that reunion in heaven, they were legitimately fearful of what about this person, that has caused me so much pain and so much devastation in my life. I know they're a believer. I expect them to be in heaven. I don't want to see them. And sometimes even on this relational side, we have some fears about heaven. But we talk through that, and you don't have to worry about that, because heaven is a place of perfected relationships. It's where everything and everyone is set right and made right. In heaven, it seems to me that we're able to recognize people, even those we've never met before, even those from a different time of history. Jesus says we'll sit down at the feast in heaven with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob in Matthew chapter 8. I think we'll be able to interact with some of those Bible heroes. And we'll be able to talk to Moses. What was it like standing at that bush that was burning but not burning and hearing the voice of God? We'll be able to worship with David. We'll be able to take water walking lessons from Peter, and hear a sermon from Paul. We'll be able to quiz Martin Luther and John Calvin about theology. You'll have a chance to sit down with people from a whole different time and all these different places than you were able to experience. People from every tongue and tribe and nation, it says in Revelation 5. And it will broaden your awareness of how Jesus is recognized and Jesus is lifted up by people throughout time and around the world. People who aren't like you, but people who get to the same place as you. And we'll be there in unity and togetherness, and our distinctions and divisions will all pass away. But my guess is you'll have some other people to look up first. Some of you just want to pull up a table in the corner and sit down with your dad, who passed away when you were way too young, and catch him up on so much of life that you've lived since. Or you just want to see that loving look in your mom's eyes again. Sit down at her table for a meal. Some of you have a brother or a sister, your own child, that you just cried till you couldn't cry anymore when you had to say goodbye. And maybe even at the funeral, your pastor said something along the lines of, let's remember as we say goodbye that we're not saying goodbye forever, we're saying goodbye for now. I want you to know that it's real. It's not a fairy tale. It's not a hope. The real heaven is a place of reunion and restoration. And I'm going to get to hear a story from my grandpa again. It's going to be amazing. But I want you to know that by far, the greatest relationship that you will experience in heaven will be with God. God will be there. You will get to meet Jesus Christ. Look at what Revelation 21:3 says. It says, I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, look, God's dwelling place is now among people, and He will dwell with them. They will be His people, and God Himself will be with them and will be their God. One of these days, and it's closer than you think, you get to meet Jesus. Not in a book, not in a sermon, not from somebody trying to describe Him. You get to see the nail-scarred hands. You get to fall at His feet to say, thank you for what you've done. You get to hear His love as He says, come, my good and faithful follower, my servant. Come and share your Master's happiness. All of heaven is prepared for you. Don't miss that. Don't let go of that for the world. And Satan has been working overtime in so many of our lives to make us comfortable in this world. He's been scheming to make us think that this earth and this life is probably as good as it gets. I'm telling you that heaven is greater than any of this. By far. Let me just tell you one more thing about heaven. No, I'm running out of time. In heaven, we will all have true peace. Just peace. No stress. No worries, no fears. It's hard to imagine, isn't it? I mean, it's almost beyond us to try to picture what heaven will be. Imagine a perfectly peaceful place. And even John, he kind of shifts from trying to describe what heaven is, because he doesn't have the words, to just saying, well, here's what heaven is not. And it's one of the most read passages in the book of Revelation. Revelation 21:3-5 says, God Himself will be with them, be their God. He'll wipe away every tear from their eyes. No more tears. There'll be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. He who was seated on the throne said, I am making everything new. Then He said, write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true. I think John, he's doing his best to try, let me paint a picture. Let me tell you what heaven is going to be like. But when it gets down to it, the best that he can do is to say, well, I can tell you what's not there. It's just impossible. It'd be like trying to describe your iPhone to your great-great-great-grandpa. Yeah, I have this thing that I can make phone calls, and I can text, and I can video chat with. I can see them face to face. I can access through the internet all the information known in all the world. Mostly, I use it to post pictures of my food. And great-great-great-grandpa is going to say, "Wait, what's a phone call?" It's just a different plane. And you've had this happen, right? That's kind of John's dilemma with heaven. How do you describe this when it's just a whole different realm? And so he settles for, well, I'll tell you what it's not. You've done this, right? That maybe your wife is trying to describe this perfect dress that she saw at the store, and you're not kind of getting it. And so, it's not long. Don't picture it as long. It's not smooth. There's a little gather over the... sometimes it's easier to say what it's not. My friend Kyle Ottoman, pastor back in Kentucky, talks of this when he was on a mission trip to Africa and had to talk through a translator. Kyle talks about he was trying to tell people, and they were asking questions about what it was like to live in the United States. That is basically beyond their ability to understand. It's beyond this guy's ability to try to translate. How do you tell a woman who's never used electricity, how do you describe to her the lights of the Las Vegas Strip? How do you tell a guy who's never had running water about your hot shower and maybe the pool or the hot tub in your backyard? It's too much to imagine. And what Kyle discovered is that when we're talking about another level of a place, you can do a lot better of describing the United States by what it's not. For instance, if you lived where I lived, you wouldn't have to eat rice every day. If you lived where I lived, you wouldn't have to go without an education. If you lived where I lived, you wouldn't have to walk miles and miles and miles to get water every day. And I think that's what John is doing. He's saying, if you could see heaven, I want you to know how great it is. Let me tell you what's not there. Let me paint the picture. In heaven, there are no tears. Not a one in heaven. There's no death. There's no mourning or crying or pain. God says, I'm making everything new. Think about that. That means there's no Advil in heaven. Don't need it. No Tylenol. No more Dayquil or NyQuil or even Pepto-Bismol. There's no more arthritis in heaven. There's no asthma. No hospitals. No ambulances. Here's what else is missing. There's no crime. No violence. No more lying. No more cheating. No more stealing. You don't have to lock your doors or hide your keys or hold on to your wallet anymore. There's no exploitation in heaven. No more half-naked pop-ups on your computer or TV screen. No more abuse. No more neglect. No more addictions. In heaven, just think of this. In heaven, there's no tear-stained divorce papers. No fractured families. No more broken hearts. No more lost jobs in heaven. There's going to be plenty to do. I mean, we'll be able to create and use our time and our skills. No lost jobs. No lost homes in heaven. No foreclosures. Jesus bought it for you. No more grind. No more lost children. Neglected children. Abandoned children. Enslaved children. No deaf ears, no blind eyes, no wheelchairs, no crutches, no canes in heaven, no cancer in heaven. No racism. There's no prejudice. There's no one looking down on you. Everyone sees everyone else as equal. There's no jails. There's no prison. There's no stress. There's no strife. There's no IRS in heaven. No CIA or NSA or even USA or UK or UN or CBS or NBC or ABC or CNN or MSNBC, although ESPN will survive. Listen to me, there's no shame in heaven. No guilt. Nothing that you have left to be embarrassed about in your past. Not a thing that you have to worry about trying to hide. It's gone. Once you get to heaven, there's no war. No one gets called off to deployments in heaven. What's it going to be like? Imagine no more anxious waiting rooms. No empty tissue boxes. No more tables for one. No more motionless ultrasounds. No more small caskets. Because He who is seated on the throne said, I am making everything new. And I hope you're fired up about it, because I promise you the shores of heaven are closer than you think. At any moment the Holy One of heaven can appear, and that day is drawing near. It's almost here. Let's pray. God, we are so thankful for what you've done. That you haven't just forgiven us and restored us. You have a place for us. A place beyond our imagination where we get to spend forever with you. Restored, reunited, and all these bad things. Just no more. No more. Come quickly, Lord Jesus.